Now, I'm so excited to actually get to the text of Acts chapter 2. We've covered the first 4 verses sufficiently, so let's pick up with verse 5. They were staying in Jerusalem, God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. That's a bit of an exaggeration from our 20th century standpoint. Every nation. There were Guatemalans there? No. But every nation under the Roman world. Jerusalem Temple actually, this is a little irrelevant trivia, was actually a vacation destination for many Romans, not just Jews. And they would come and pay for a sacrifice to be made because this temple was so stinking cool. It was this huge building built by Herod. It had this gold facade on it and all these glittering stones on it. They had one, in fact, we're gonna see this gate, not literally, but in the next chapter. That was as high as the dining hall is behind us. One gate, made out of or covered with brass. Now, can you imagine if the sun was shining off that gate and it just explodes into your face? It was quite an incredible place to see. So all these people are there, most of them God-fearing. When they heard the sound, the crowd came together in bewilderment. This is the first of 4 different vocabulary words that Luke uses to describe how befuddled, amazed, bewildered, astonished, shocked they were. We get the word bewildered, verse 6. Verse 7, utterly amazed. Verse 12, amazed and perplexed. In other words, Luke is stretching his considerable vocabulary to get the point. They're standing there going, what's going on? It's amazing. And what amazed them is they heard them speaking in their own language. You see that word in verse 6? It's not precisely the word language. It's a more specific word than that. It means dialect. So they didn't just hear English. They heard Boston English. Or they heard Texan y'all English. Or, they heard the British English. I was in Ethiopia last summer. This Ethiopian man, he was a writer and a poet. And he told me the funniest thing. He said, English was born in Britain. It grew up in America. It got sick in India. And it died in Africa. So, this is pretty much true. They're speaking not only in the language, but the very dialect of these various people groups. And they're hearing this in their own dialect. Now, some have asked, does that mean it's not really a miracle of tongues, but a miracle of hearing? No. The miracle is identified as speaking in tongues. That they were speaking in a specific dialect is all the more impressive. But it's still the speaking that was taking place. Verse 7, utterly amazed, they ask, are not all these men speaking Galileans? Now, it would be impressive if I just broke out into fluent French, But conceivably, I could have studied French, which I didn't, but I could have. Now, I could break out into a little German. Ach, so gut. But not much. But if I started breaking out in another language, that would still be fairly impressive. Kobe Bryant, dude goes over to the Olympics, is interviewed by the English cameraman and speaks English. Interviewed by the Italian cameraman and he speaks fluent Italian. Kobe Bryant. And I think he even speaks a little Spanish. And all his teammates are going, dude, you're like amazing. And he's going, shucks, it was nothing. Okay, that's still impressive. But for a Galilean to do it, Kobe, you don't necessarily expect an athlete to be multilingual and super educated. He's impressive. But a Galilean? Galileans were isolated, rural people, and these Galileans, most of them were fishermen. So you got these guys, blue-collar workers, make their living by going out and fishing. And another thing about Galileans, they had a speech impediment. mean, not literally a speech impediment, but they had in their own speech, they swallow their guttural, and so they kind of sounded like this. And it didn't sound like they were very smart people. And suddenly, these hillbillies are going, Montsalé-Bouquois. And you're just going, what is going on here? So the people ask that very question. Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and parts of Libya near Cyrene, visitors from Rome. Now, he didn't get all of the nations. But do any of you have the NIV Study Bible in your hand? I see you do, Jonathan. You see that map there? Did you trace on the map where these countries were? Let's go through them again. I want you to look carefully at your map. This is also in your notebook if you want to follow along there as well. But if you looked on the map, the first country listed, Parthia, it is to the east and to the north. And they start going south. Under Parthia is Media. Under Media is Elam. So he goes from the farthest east and north to south. And then he comes over a little bit on the map and goes north to south. Comes over a little bit on the map and goes north to south. He doesn't follow that pattern exactly. But if you knew your map, if you knew your Middle Eastern geography, you would notice what he's doing is making a sweep of the entire map. This isn't just a roll call of nations. He is showing the completion of the people who are hearing in their own language the mercies of God. This is Babel in reverse. Instead of from one language, God dispersing people through mixing up their language, which, by the way, was the most effective trick he ever played on human beings. In terms of separating us, God could have done nothing more than mix up our languages, excuse me, so that we were unable to communicate with one another. They did the same thing with men and women, but that's a different story. The reverse of Babel now is taking place so that in one spot at one time, all the nations of the known world are hearing the gospel proclaimed. Verse 11, both Jews and converts to Judaism. I need to let you know there are two kinds of converts mentioned in the book of Acts. Of course, there's Jews who aren't converts at all. They're Jews, they belong to Judaism. And then there's another group of people that really love God. And they come into Jerusalem